Hello ZZZ proxies, it's your boy Josh, and today we'll be going through our advanced Sanby guide and talking a few tucks, tricks, and builds to max out your Sanby, as well as go through a bit of higher investments for those higher rollers, and see what an M6 Anby really brings to the table, and is it even worth going further beyond. But before we begin, I've noticed a few of us have not yet subscribed to the channel. Yes, I see you. Now look at the button. Now back to me. You probably are subscribed, and that is good. Now back to the button. Is it still red? Go ahead, press it. And now back to me. Now, you see I'm happy, and we can continue on with this video. Sanby folks, Soldier Zero, the Burger Queen. There are just so many nicknames for them, but for good reason. And her getting a well-needed upgrade, turning from soft Hello Kitty to slashy slasher Kuromi girl. So let's start talking about Sanby, firstly with her build. As many of us know, the tips to bringing out DPS characters is under the hood. So firstly, to optimize, let's take a look at my personal build as an example. Currently, I have 12 crit rate rolls, and with a crit rate W engine option, you're going to need at least 12 crit rate subset rolls in order to reach 99.8%, which I know seems super copium, but this is generally the most ideal build. We then move on to the other offensive stat rolls, and because of how things generally shake out, we like to have at least 3 out of our 4 average rolls be contributing substats. For Soldier Zero, the priorities are crit rate until you get to those 12 rolls, then crit damage and attack, then pen and anomaly proficiency as supplementary. Ideally, we like around 8 to 10 crit damage rolls, and that leaves us with around 5 to 8 rolls into attack percent on the other substats. Yes, folks, these are idealistic, but the difference is very much shown in the numbers. As for those who have seen my previous Sanby early access guide video, we call her the calculator. She's a number churner, and with this advanced guide, it really only solidifies her so. Moving on to W engine comparisons, and boy, is this section not going to be as surprising as I'd like it to be, because the Severed Innocence is just an absolutely baller of a W engine option, boasting a total of 108% crit damage, some of the best base attack you'll get from a W engine option, alongside 20% electro bonus, which for those who value stat distributions, we can basically rotate Sanby from electric to pen ratio because of the calc spread. But I digress. Let's focus on the comparisons, and here is your calc charts. The Severed Innocence turns out to be leagues better than your standard S tier option and the R5 A tier options. But what surprises me is that if we were to actually swap in older signatures of other attacking units, like Haramasa, even Juyen and Evelyn, we'd actually see their baseline stats make all the difference and are only 10 to 20% off versus the almost 20 to 30% of the other options. This can be good for those who have pulled previous options and are looking to just swap W engines during DA or She runs. But alas, I understand the majority of us would like to have a dedicated W engine on each of your characters, and of course, Sanby's signature cuts no slack, as it's by far one of the better options. But is it worth folks' money? Even with consideration of other characters also benefiting from the base stats of this W engine option, I'd actually advise folks not to pull on this W engine, as this is more of a numbers upgrade than a necessary part of her build. Yes, you're getting big, humongous stats, but that doesn't change the core gameplay, unlike some characters. Miyabi, trigger. So going for an alternative is actually much more advised here than in other cases. But if you like a W engine that is quite versatile, why not pick this one up, as it boasts a ton of crit damage for your crit rate centric attackers. And hey, if you're wondering how you can get in on more of the action here with me, I actually stream a ton. And if you can't always catch lives, we have our highlights and VODs channel. Make sure to check them out on YouTube. Next, we move on to rotations. And boy, this is going to be a head scratcher. So if you're ready to learn Sanby tech, let's begin. First, let's start with the classic M0 non-stun rotation. You should be rotating into your stun characters a majority of the time while also building up 3 stacks of aftershock before you actually initiate the stun period. This is because you want to go into the stun with 2 chains that have increased electric bonuses and the attack and crit from Shadow Harmony. Then, with you not having pressed special, you can start the true stun window with 3 specials. And we're going to start to implement a very simple cancel, the old cancel. And after any White Thunder that you inflict, the damage and potential Thunder Smite that comes after is almost instantaneous. So much so that it only is a 3-ish plus frame difference. So if you were to time the ult properly and actually do so after the dash is initiated, indicated by the designated line, and contact through the enemy body, you can cancel that and save yourself a few centiseconds, which is super nice when the stun window is actually incredibly tight. After that, you just need to triple E, hold E, then triple E to finish the rest of the general combo. It's pretty easy and very doable to fit in almost all boss stun windows, unless they be on the trend. Between us talking about our next premium stun rotation, it should be noted that there's one part of Sanby's kit that's a bit unoptimized, the basic flow from hold EX special. See, this is somewhat unnecessary, but much like how the basic 3 can flow into 5 dash combo into the finisher, so too can you actually execute the same dash maneuver after using a hold EX special. Yet this honestly is a time sinker and prevents you from getting off a full 12 E combo. The only reason you'd be using this is to actually maintain iframes against certain units who have different staggers or other means to disrupt your attack flow. So keep this in mind as an escape option, but don't include it in your full damage burst window. Then let's start to move into the premium 12+1 Soldier Zero combo. I have to give a shout out to Lin Zero for their amazing 12+1 combo video that barely gets in that white last thunder and thunder smite attack, but still it is impressive and actually alters my theory a bit on how I should be approaching the stun window. Initially, I was approaching it to more an Evelyn style where the ultimate of Jshoea will come during the true stun window after an initial round of EX specials. How Lin Zero lines it up is that we actually start with a hold EX on the stun character into a quick assist for 3 special dash that has Anby start the stun window, which is a bit unconventional, yet with manual allows us to maximize the total stun window. But we then use Astra's ultimate during the chain portion. This actually is so much more economical as we're utilizing the chain restriction to force Anby to take the 2 chains versus just quick assist, unlike Jshoea and Evelyn, where we utilize a cancel of the idyllic cadenza to force the proper swap. Again, economical, as the focus of optimizing damage is not trying to fit as many chains, as the White Thunder and Thunder Smite are just as impactful, with their over 300% damage multipliers. So after we go through the chain like so, we'll be wanting to utilize an ult cancel of a single White Thunder stack. This is where the 1 in the 12+1 comes in. The reason we don't just move into an EX special here is that the math works out that one use of White Thunder is 334%, plus the actual special dash itself, which is 87%. This totaling up to 415% damage multiplier. Of course, simplified as White Thunder is aftershock and can receive buffs differently, yet it is an easy way to nudge in some more damage than just an extra Thunder Smite on its own. That comes out to 376% in damage multipliers. Thus, after a single dash cancel with your ult, you'll be rushing down the finish line with a hopeful 2 full bars of EX ready to triple White Thunder dash, and that ends the combo. I personally have been practicing this combo variation for about 2 hours, and boy, I can barely fit in 11 because of the inconsistent timing of the initiation of the stun, which requires a frame 1 stun window start, which I'm too boomer to get, so running an average of 10 to 11 plus 1 combo is still actually pretty good for this old soul here. But the idea you should be getting from this video is that Sanby doesn't have much fancy tech aside from frame timing knowledge. Unlike the slightly more technical Evelyn, yet this only gets more difficult when considering the mindscapes, as the rotations will get a little funky going into M2+. For those wondering, Josh, is the M1 worth it over the W engine? The easy answer is not by a long shot. But what the M1 does set you up for is the M2. This mindscape is the game changer and grants you 12% crit rate up front with a new attack stat called the Thunder Cry. Going to use 6 stacks from White Thunder to continually dash attacks against your enemy without the need for EX special. So an attack variation that I came up with here actually doesn't have us using Jshoea ultimate, but instead just running through the initial chain of Sanby, Chingy, Sanby, canceling into White Thunder dash, ult cancel, and then using up the Thunder Cry and then 2 EX to 3 White Thunder dash. This way, the whole combo actually fits into the window versus having to skimp out on 1 or 2 last White Thunder and Thunder Smites. This rotation should be utilized after the first wave once you've used up or don't have your Jshoea ult. Because if you think about it, the M0 rotation we just mentioned earlier actually does project to even do slightly more damage, even with considerations of the mindscapes, because they actually don't have much more attack, and instead doing an Jshoea chain combo, we're just utilizing Thunder Cry. Really quick, pop quiz. If you have been following the guide so far, if we are at M2+, what would be my next step in this rotation?
I can't believe I still have
Chikandes. Because my Jshoea doesn't have ult, I should be utilizing the M2 Thunder Cry combo, cutting the chain shorter to fit in 6 dashes of White Thunder to follow up with EX and White Thunder dashes. And so by learning these 2 different rotations, we have all the rotations we need to set us up for max damage in our most difficult of runs. If you have the ult from Jshoea, here's the quick showcase of both ult uptimes, and it can get a bit funky. Then the rest of the mindscapes like M4 just add extra numbers to your damage, Same goes for the M6, which I feel like is a bit uninspired, but realistically, who is living your onslaught of attacks past M2 anyways? But for those who are curious, I evaluated the calcs the Pride Win did versus my field testing and found little differences in the numbers. Versus just 3 weeks ago, we had Evelyn M6 touching 195%. And her damage overall is just higher. Sanby is a step back from the correlation of release date to power creep, but by no means is she a slouch. And if you've invested properly, and get ready to reap the rewards, especially when her best running mate is just along the horizon. And lastly, to talk about teams, let's go over some Sanby team variations. Firstly, of course, we have to mention the current best team right now, that is Yao, Qingyi, and Sanby. Then, of course, we go to the Sanby potential trigger down the line, and Yao. That team is going to be extremely potent, as we already have a glimpse of how good Trigger can actually be as a hybrid of a sort of support and also off-field stunner that really synergizes with Sanby so incredibly well, as Sanby does want more on-field time than Qingyi can offer. Then other supports that we're able to swap in are Caesar King, Pulchra in the stun position, as well as Lucy and or Nicole. And lastly, let's talk about DPS comparisons. Sanby actually performs slightly under Eve and Miyabi in their best teams. But again, this might change with the inclusion of Trigger, a video that I'll be saving for early access next week, so subscribe to stay in the loop. Then it's quite necessary to talk about the disgruntled Sanby fans and their troubles with iframes. And to be honest, the majority of the issues with Sanby's ult being able to miss and or be disrupted, not having the flexibility in certain parts of basic rotations to dodge cancel, it's a bit tough. However, if this is the product, then most folks will have to just understand how to adjust to the character's playstyle. I personally would rather have a character that has some holes so they're not wholly invincible like Miyabi for 75% of her attack animations. But again, this is my take. I still believe that if there are bugs that are not intended, the devs should adjust for them. We've sent out our complaints, and let's just hope that the devs make a quick fix of them. Not to end this video on a low note, but I still like to objectively review the characters. It's important that we talk about the pros, cons, and especially the stuff in between, like a burger. Thank you for watching this advanced guide to Sanby, and I'll be sure to update her as soon as we get our hands on Trigger next week. Make sure to subscribe to catch more live streams and exclusive ZZZ content with your boy. And hey, why not head over to Twitch? We're growing every single day. Join the movement, and we'll see you in the next video. Josh out.